I mean, when someone shows up with a colorful background like that, Mr. Kelly, I had to. I got schooled before we even started this. That's the Mississippi Valley River, old riverbeds, and the white one is the current path of the Mississippi.
Right.
Correct?
So yeah, this is a U.S. geological map of the archaic Mississippi River meanderings as it goes in geological time across the river valley.
Interesting.
And, it looked to me like art, so I stitched them together and I had it printed out. And
100%, I love it. You're the guy who helped to found Wired magazine.
yes,
Clearly a technological bent, but yet here you are with this is your sixth book now. Well, this is a 3-set volume, so we really got to call those 3 books, right? So
no,
9 books.
It's one book.
One book. Okay.
Vanishing Asia is one book that actually made a prototype, and it was just too big to lift, and so I had to divide it into 3 very big books. And it is, well, I've done a lot of books. Some of them I actually edited rather than wrote myself. They were the Whole Earth catalogs that I did in the 80s, and I've been writing books and doing books that are like catalogs, and it's hard to say whether they're written or as edited or a little both.
Sure.
I love books. I'm going to do the magic of virtual computing. This is sort of, I don't know, you can see my
wow
2-story library. I can't really, not really made for this, but anyway, I have a 2-story library that I live in, and so I love books. They're everywhere, and making a book is a natural thing for me. I like, I'm old school in that way. However, I will say I'm not going to be making things book first from now on. I think the center of the culture has moved to the screen where we are right now. And I advise young people, and I'm taking my own advice. YouTube is going to be it's underrated in terms of its cultural influence. The moving screen, video on screen, coming with augmented reality, virtual reality, that is, TikTok, all that kind of stuff, that's the center of culture. And that's where I want to be. So this book is old school. It's sort of a 40-year project that I'm completing now, because this is the last of the book world.
So many things you said I want to touch on there. It's interesting. So the tagline of this podcast is "Art is life and life is art." Clearly, a person who makes a 3-volume set, which is really one book, giant book, that takes 40 years, understands that in ways that most people don't probably ever investigate. It's fascinating to me because you're in the technological space, but then you did this book and you stuck with it for 40 years, which is, it's mind-blowing. And now here you are talking about, you love books, you're old school, yet you want to stay at the heartbeat of culture. You're like a walking dichotomy, and to me, it's fascinating. Why would you give up the book totally and start to focus more on the technological side of things?
It's very simple. I mean, my kids, who are young adults, they don't read books. Their friends are not reading books. If I want to talk to them or their generation,
okay,
I need to go to the screen.
Okay.
My kids and their friends spend all their discretionary time watching the screen, Netflix, YouTube, TikTok. And I want to be there because that's where it is. Books are kind of like opera. They're not going to go away. They're just not as important as they were before in terms
I see. Okay.
Books will never go away. This book that I made, Vanishing Asia, will be around for 100 years. Paper is very, very permanent if it keeps it dry. And it never goes obsolete. So people will still make books, but they won't be as cheap as they were now. They'll become more expensive.
Hmm.
However, they're just not at the center of the cultural conversation. They're not where people are giving their attention to. And I want to be there.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And that's a very good point. I mean, I think generally speaking, this is anecdotal. I don't have any evidence in front of me or the numbers, but very few people ever read another book once they graduate from high school, let alone if they go on to higher education. So if you want to reach someone, I would agree with you. You've got to meet them where they live and breathe, and then hopefully you can carry the conversation once you have their attention to any number of different mediums to engage with them. And I guess that's what you're saying, just in another way as well.
Exactly. And, you began by saying this is about art is life, life is art. And
Yes.
right now, video YouTube is considered low rent, not high art. The people who are making YouTubes are not considered artists. But this is very similar to the state of comic books in the US in the 50s. Comics were, for kids, comics were low art. They weren't, no one would have ever said, well, the people who made comic books were high artists. But all the major art in cinema in the past decade have been comic book based.
They certainly have taken that and run with it. You are right.
Fairy tales from Disney. So those were all not considered art at the time, but became art. And so the people who are working on in YouTube right now and TikTok, some of them will become recognized to be the artists of our age. And even if they're not born yet, or maybe they aren't working, but this will be the medium where the art of this age will be made.
Yeah, you're touching on a subject that Peter Diamandis, I think you may have know who he is, the guy who did SpaceX, right? And he talks about the 6 Ds of something. I forget what it was, but democratization, demonetization, etc. And generally speaking, the YouTube and TikTok gives the internet generally anything that has a video format, even like this with Zoom, it affords people an entree into this world, and what they do with it, is up to them. Whether it's music videos or picture books or performance art or staged readings, musics, whatever, musical pieces, whatever. It allows them entry into a world that previously there were like a lot of barriers. You had to have a publisher, you had to have a studio, you had to have a network, etc. So I agree with you. That does happen. I want to ask you, what started, and I'm mistaken, we talked about this before we started recording. We both were in Iran. We missed each other by a couple of years, and I was convinced that we had met, but it never happened. But what started you even to go to Iran and then begin? That's pretty much the time you began this journey for your book on Asia, which has lasted 40 years. How did that begin, and how did you maintain the persistence and the discipline and the strength to stay through with that, see this thing to its end ultimately?
Yeah. So my journey to Asia actually began in Hong Kong and Japan in 1972, where I dropped out of college, where I was going to study geology of all things. And I should have gone to art school. I didn't know it, and I should have taken a gap year, which did not exist at the time. Right. But I was just completely frustrated in being in grade 12, sitting in a classroom. I just could not do that anymore. And so I dropped out, and I started to pursue photography, which at that time was a do-it-yourself medium. If you wanted to do photography, you had to be a chemist and do the optics and develop the film. So there was a nice blend of science and art for me. I was interested in both of those, and this was a nice convergence. And I was doing fine art, black and white photography, kind of landscape, big camera stuff. And but I read the book Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman, which was blew my gaskets, and I had to travel, which I'd never done. I'd never had any appetite. But then I decided to kind of start to do National Geographic kind of photography, not knowing anything. I was like a 19-year-old, and I called up National Geographic. Called up the editor out of the blue. Said, I'm going to Japan and Taiwan. Do you need any photographs? And he said, well, thank you, son, but that's not how it kind of works here. But when you come back, show me your work.
Wow. Okay.
And so I set out to do things in color for the first time, in color slides. And I started in Asia, and I had an epiphany on that first trip, which is I met two Swiss guys in Taiwan who had just been doing the Overland Asia tour and come from the Philippines and Indonesia and India. And they were telling me these travels, and it blew my mind because I had gone to Taiwan and at the invitation of a high school friend of mine who lived there. And these guys were telling me stories about India and stuff. And the next country, and I was like, who did you know? And they said, you don't need to know anybody, you just go. And it's like, what? You don't have to be invited, you just buy a ticket? I said, yes, you should buy a ticket to the Philippines. It's right next door. I can do that. So I bought a ticket to the Philippines. I did not have a map. There was no guidebooks to the country. There was nothing. I had not a single address. I didn't know anything. I literally got on a plane with no information. I didn't know about hotel. I didn't have anything. And I arrived in Manila, and I was at the airport looking around saying, like, oh, what do I do now? There's nobody that I know here. There's no map. There's no guidebooks. And I just started asking people at the airport about, like, where can I stay? And so that was an awakening, was that, oh my gosh, there's the country next to the country next to this country, and I can just keep going. And I started doing that, and I would come back to the States to make some money, because I figured out that I could make more money doing photography at home and then go back than I could trying to earn money in Asia. The one exception after many, many years of travel was Iran. I wound up in Iran around 70 because you could actually get a job in Iran at American salaries.
True. Very true. Yes.
What it was people teaching English to the Iranian Air Force. And that was a standard job for expats. And you could make a pretty good amount of money doing that. And so that's what I wound up in Iran to work. And I got a job at Bell Helicopter, putting out a newsletter and using my photography. So, and being paid pretty good at that time. That's a short version of my travels. Sure. I went on from there to the Middle East and so forth. But I would say, for me, Asia was my college. As a college dropout, I decided at some point to award myself an honorary degree in Asian studies.
I was going to suggest that. Yes. You said something. You said, you were bored in the 12th grade, just sitting in class. Right. And I don't know if you saw it. I raised my hand. So was I. I was bored to tears. But at that point, I'd already traveled a good portion of this country. We moved all the time in my nuclear family growing up, my biological family. And then, I'd been over a fair amount of the world, just getting to Iran, and then, traveling back to the States. So I was sitting in these classrooms and I was like, what the fuck am I doing here? What is going on? Is this the real life pinching myself? And I jokingly say I'm just surrounded by a bunch of people who don't really even understand that they're, in this box. And if they get outside the box, there's this entire world. You were 19 when that happened, when you met these Swiss cats in Taiwan. Okay, that's fascinating. Where did you grow up? What part of the U.S.?
I grew up in Westfield, New Jersey, which is a bedroom community for New York City.
Yes.
Worked in New York City, worked for Time Life, the media empire. And I try to but I try to educate my kids about how unbelievably parochial and isolated or non-cosmopolitan it was growing up in New Jersey in the 50s and 60s. Even with New York being adjacent, I didn't see Chinese people. I never picked up chopsticks. I never had a Chinese food ever.
Wow.
I think we ate before I graduated from high school. I think we ate as a family at a restaurant 3 times.
Wow.
I think for me, it was a big thing in senior year of high school, buying a Subway sandwich at a Subway place because I didn't have any money. I always ate at home. The idea of buying food outside was like very strange. I didn't know how to order through high school.
This is the guy that goes and travels Asia and puts a book together. That's amazing, right? Right.
Imagine getting there and just being blown away by what was possible, seeing everything done on the street, inside out. So there was kind of inside out lives where people kind of lived on the street. They worked on the street. You could walk into their homes. It was just everything was visible. And then except for Japan, where I was very poor, but in Taiwan and of course the rest of Asia, I was, even with my meager little $200 a month, I could basically eat whatever I wanted to eat. I never asked about prices. And so that was just I'm just saying life in the 50s and 60s in the US. Like I remember coming back from Asia and decided I wanted to try to cook for my parents some of this food. And I went to buy ginger. I basically had to travel to New York City to buy.
I was just going to say, yeah. Did anyone even know what ginger was?
It was the Italians knew what it was. A couple other, but it was like supermarkets would never have such a thing. Right. Supermarkets were, if we were to visit a A&P supermarket today that they had in the 50s, you would be shocked. And I was like, this is it. I mean, it's like there's nothing here. You've got macaroni and you've got, white bread, Wonder Bread. It's like, what are we doing? So, so that coming into Asia was a far greater shock than it would be for my kids, who first of all had been to Asia as kids, and secondly, just what we have now available. We're far more cosmopolitan. I can run down the street and get a banh mi, Vietnamese sandwich, down the street. It's like, what?
Right. Everything changes. Exactly. No, as I said, my family, we moved a lot. After we left Iran, we ended up about a year later in Ohio. I knew nothing about Ohio. I confused Ohio with Iowa. Just no notion of what the Midwest was at all. And we're half Iranian, so we ate Persian food frequently, and other stuff. Midwesterners aren't really big on vegetables, at least they weren't in the 70s. And so we went to the grocery store and I'm looking for bell peppers. My mother wanted to make stuffed bell peppers. She would put, ground beef and other things, rice and whatnot in it. And the guy looks at me in the grocery store and he goes, "What?" I said, "Bell peppers." And I was approximately the age you were. Well, maybe not quite, like 17. And he goes, "Oh, what are you talking about?" And I describe it to him. He goes, "Oh, you mean a mango?" Mango? Mango's a fruit, sir. No, this is a vegetable. And we went back and forth, and we went over, sure enough, and it was labeled, there were the green bell peppers, mangoes.
Wow.
I just like, okay, where the hell am I? What's going on? And then, I don't know, it was probably 2 or 3 months later, we had that for dinner. A friend came over at dinner time, and he goes, stuffed mangoes? what the hell are you talking about? I just, it was candid camera back then. It wasn't punked. And I was like, all right, where's the camera? This can't be true. But
Right.
anyway, I can relate to that. So you're like one of the original OG, as they say, bridge and tunnel crowd, of what New Yorkers say of people from New Jersey.
Yeah, but
no disparagement.
My dad was commuting. I wasn't. Again, I didn't have any money, and then I had a bicycle to get around. I hitchhiked to work along Route 22.
Okay.
I occasionally went into New York, but it was kind of basically in the 70s when I was home. In the 70s, New York was a little scary place. It was not the sort of tamed yuppie place that it has become right now. And
tell them.
so it was a little, you had to kind of like, watch yourself. But so I didn't really have any love for New York. I had no desire to live there. I wanted to go back to Asia, and where, by the way, you were perfectly safe all the time, even when you weren't safe. I mean, you could get pickpocketed at any moment. You could lose
Right.
all that you had, but you were never in personal danger. That's changed, but at that time, that was generally true. Especially as a foreigner, you were just you were fairly immune to, petty violence. There really wasn't any, because the police would. I had my camera stolen 3 different times, 3 different countries, and I got them back each time. And
what?
Yeah, I know. And the one time in Myanmar, Burma, they beat up that guy. It wasn't pretty.
No,
they weren't showing
not.
me, but I just know what happened. And
right.
they so people, everybody knows each other. There's less anonymity, and so there were consequences for stealing.
It brings to mind, I understand, and you're very tactfully tap dancing out of that. I see you. We had a similar incident happen in Iran. My aunt, my father's only sister, had a beautiful house up in the northern part of Tehran, Shemran, and kind of like the Beverly Hills of Tehran. And someone had broken into the house and stolen a lot of stuff. And the cops went through the driver and her, cleaning housekeeper, and then this young kid who was the gardener. And I don't know, he was 14, 15. And the cops they beat the hell out of him. We didn't see it happen. But when the kids showed up, they brought him back to my aunt's house, and he apologized profusely, and he was involved in it. But just like you said, it's a different world. It's a different culture. I'm not, police brutality is a whole other topic. I'm not for it. But it gets intense. And you did say something that's true, that is one of the benefits of traveling. You immerse yourself in another culture, if you're brave enough to do such a thing. And I always suggest to people, like, go to a place where you don't know the language, you don't know the culture, you don't know the customs, you don't know the religion, and just have at it. Go navigate and learn what it's like. Nothing destroys bigotry and prejudice quite so quickly as travel.
Yeah. During the right after the 9/11, when the airlines shut down, the whole country shut down, in a degree even more than what happened with COVID.
Okay.
There was no planes in the sky for months, and I thought that what the U.S. should do would be to give everybody who was under 23 years old, whatever it was, a free ticket anywhere in the world that they wanted.
Mhm.
And, you know, like 6 months pay, which would kickstart the airlines and get everybody going in, and would erase and solve our our problems about prejudice in the world. Because, as you say, there's nothing more powerful than that, than getting and visiting and living with people outside of your own country, in terms of not just overcoming the bias, but giving you survival skills, giving you a sense of who you are, of what you want to do, of of interacting with people who aren't like you.
Exactly.
And so we don't have that anymore in our country with the Army, because we have a volunteer Army, and only people who volunteer are those who basically are poor.
Mhm.
And so the draft, for all its things that I object to, and I still object to it, the one good thing that it did was that it took people of all different backgrounds, and you're in the same barracks.
That's true. That's
And
true.
I'm a big believer in U.S. national service. The U.S. should have a mandatory national service. So every young person must give 2 years of service, but you have a complete choice about what that. It doesn't have to be military. It can be the Peace Corps. It could be Code for America. It could be
I
volunteer,
love that idea, Kevin.
whatever it
I
is.
love that idea.
But you have to have 2 years, and you're going to be mixed up with people unlike you. And for 2 years, you are serving, paying back for your education, and all those other things, and mixing it up. And if you want to go overseas, fine, we'll fund that as well. Man, that would transform the country.
God, that's a great idea. Jesus, I love that. That's a beautiful idea. As soon as you said that, I was like, forget about the military angle. Make it another angle of
Yeah.
service. Yeah.
Service.
Wow.
Right. National
Wow.
service.
So in that, since we're in that space right now, you clearly are an outlier in the way you view the world and the way you see things and the way you experience life, obviously. What happened? Where was the shift or the melding or the transference from traveling the world, and what precipitated you starting Wired magazine and going down that path, and then of course making a statement which has been, I don't know, repeated how many times, but kudos to you. You don't need all the fans in the world. You really just need 1,000 solid fans,
right,
to have a career. How did that happen? When did that happen?
Well, for me, the inflection point, when you're writing a Hollywood screen, they always have the inciting incident.
Yes, sir.
Where the protagonist is derailed from their ordinary life. For me, that was kind of seeing the Whole Earth catalog. I saw it at Woodstock, in Woodstock, New York, and
The what catalog?
the Whole Earth catalog.
Oh, the Whole Earth catalog. Oh, right.
So at the end of high school, I saw the Whole Earth catalog, and for some reason, it was like my bell had been rung. I was just, it was like this is for me. This is for me. This is my tribe. This is made for me. This is exactly where I am. And I just devoured it. And its message, which was, you get to invent your life. Just invent it. Don't ask permission. Just go and create your life. And it gave me, and other people were doing it, and it was fun, and it was going to be, so from the Whole Earth catalog, I discovered, Mother Earth News and all these other alternative things which were about inventing your life and doing it yourself. And that, I'd never had anybody tell me that. That was, again, growing up in New Jersey. I didn't have older brothers. I was doing things completely on my own, and literally on my own, not knowing anybody else who was doing it on their own.
Can I interject real quick?
Yeah.
I have to ask you a question. You said your father did what? What was his line of work?
He worked for Time Life in the what we would now call the IT department. But,
wow. Okay.
was not called IT, it was called operations research,
Okay.
where basically they were computerizing the magazine industry. Imagine having a magazine with 1 million subscribers, but you don't have a computer. It's like, wait a minute, how do you make sure, how do you manage subscriptions? Oh, there's these little cards. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, so anyway,
Okay. So that's what your father did.
He was involved with that, and then later on, he got involved with a startup you might have heard of. It's called HBO. He got involved in starting up HBO because
Okay.
of tech stuff. Anyway, so
What about your mother?
she was a housewife, 5 kids. I had 5 brothers and sisters. We were all 1 year apart, so she had 5 kids in 5 years.
You're the oldest?
4 boys, 1 girl, and my parents were totally supportive of what I was doing. The only concern they had about me dropping out was that I was going to be a bad influence on my brothers and sisters, because both of them had gone to college. My mom was the first in her family to go to college. That didn't happen. I mean, I was not trying to preach my maverick ways, so they all did go to college. But otherwise, my parents didn't give me any money at all. I had no money from them. But they supported me in terms of, just love and, encouragement and whatever.
That's incredible. That's incredible because, a young guy from, the suburbs of New York City and New Jersey just says, the hell with this. And, off I go to Taiwan. And then
So I was inspired
amazing.
by the radicals and the mavericks at the Whole Earth Catalog and the people they report on doing things. And that was
sure
giving me permission to do that.
Okay.
And when I kind of graduated from traveling, I decided I wanted to work for the Whole Earth Catalog. That was my dream job, was to work for them. But I couldn't until I felt I had something to share. When I was 18, 19, I didn't know anything. I had nothing that I knew about. So I didn't want to work there just as I didn't think I could work there. So
Right.
I earned some knowledge. And then, in fact, what happened was I came back and I started doing travel book reviews, because then I knew something. So
right.
my gate into it was travel. And then as part of writing about travel, I was reading in the magazine, The Whole Earth, about these online networks.
Aha.
I had an inspiration.
Okay.
Because I got a computer to do my travel book business. And when I plugged the computer in to the wall, to the modem, I discovered that there was this other world online. And I got someone at Whole Earth to help me get an access to this new experimental online place.
Right.
And I realized that there was another continent, there was another place, that it was
You got it right off the bat, which is, and you're just wired differently. I'm sorry to interject. It's interesting to me. No, it's fascinating. It makes this, ladies and gentlemen, this is why Kevin's who Kevin is, and interesting. No, it's fascinating, because you're not you're marching to the beat of your own drum.
Right. Exactly.
And I'm asking about your parents and your family, your upbringing. I'm guessing you guys were raised in a Christian, Protestant, whatever.
Catholic. We went to Catholic school. My parents, my mom was Kelly, Irish, right? So we're Irish Catholics.
Right.
Went to parochial school with the nuns and the priests and all that.
Okay, so this just makes it even more incredible. The Catholic guilt of the Irish family, which
we all left as kids, pretty. But I came back and I started to write about this place as if the online world, as if it was a different country. So I wrote a story, which was published in a magazine called New Age, called The Network Nation in 1984. And so I was treating it like a travel, you can journey to a different place through the wall, through the little plug in your phone. And I started writing about it in a cultural way.
Okay.
And I got the notice finally of the Whole Earth Catalog, because I was then meeting virtually with the Whole Earth Catalog people in California. And I was hired online. I claimed to be the first person hired online in 1984. Stuart Brand sent me an email saying, we need an editor for the magazine. You want to edit? And it was like, I've been waiting. This was the only job I wanted to have. And so,
Wow.
so I eased into it kind of like from the side, a lateral move of finally having something to say that travel gave me. And then, at that time, technology was not popular.
At all.
It was, you were the nerd. The nerd was not a compliment, by the way. Geeks and nerds were insults that we used for the AV guys. The guys
100%.
hallway who were really into the AV equipment. And that was like, they had the pencil projectors. It was nerd. You didn't want, so that was not my identity at all. I was interested in the cultural aspects of this. And so at Whole Earth, I helped start the Well, our own online version. And that was, again, once I was there and I saw this, I said, oh my gosh. See, I was kind of anti-technology before then, a little bit hippie-ish. Not at all. I had a bicycle. I owned a bicycle and a camera. I wasn't interested in technology. That was steam shovels and big computers and stuff. But
Yeah.
once I was online, I was like, oh, this is more like the Amish. This is about community. This is about communication. This is very human scale. I'm interested in this. And
Interesting.
that made me rethink other technologies. It was like, I need to relook at these because there's something here that's important and I need to understand it. And so that's when I began writing about technology, which is a means for me to understand it.
How old were you at the time when that transition took place for you? You're
About
entree into that world?
35.
35. Do you remember a guy in San Francisco named Ken McCarthy by any chance? No. Okay. He's an acquaintance friend. I think he's upset at me these days. I'm not sure what happened, but Ken, similar to yourself, saw the internet when it came out and realized that this is amazing and that it's community and it's a whole way to communicate with each other, but it's never going to work unless there's a way to commercialize it. And he's there was a group of people. Andreessen was a part of it. Paul Graham was a part of it. McCarthy was a part of it. Many other guys whose names escape me right now. But they started the click banner ad, which is the bane of our existence these days. But he saw that too. And it was right around 1984. He gave a kind of a seminal keynote in San Francisco. I forget what it is. It can be looked up. Interesting. So that explains the progression you had from that kind of very, I jokingly say, granola Birkenstocks, kumbaya your bicycle, and you start getting into technology. How long until was it before Wired came into existence?
Yeah, Wired was in 90, it was almost 10 years. It was in 92, 93.
Okay.
I took a sabbatical. I wound up editing and publishing, being the editor and publisher of Whole Earth. I started the Well, and I did the first virtual reality gathering in '89. And then took a sabbatical to write a book in about 91 or so. Write my first book, which was about the blurring of living systems and machines. It was based on the Santa Fe Institute complexity. It was about decentralized systems. I had a chapter on e-money,
Good Lord,
robotics, AI, all this kind of stuff and I was weaving them all together. And so there was this very long book, and I was finishing that book when I was approached by Lewis and Jane from Amsterdam about a new magazine, which was like, look, I already have one magazine I'm running. I'm not, you know, this is, yeah, I think we need the technology. I was prototyping another magazine called Signal, which I'd done a special issue for, which was like a Wired-like thing. So I was experimenting with the Wired technology side of it. But Lewis and Jane came along, and their idea was even better. Their idea was to take technology and wrap it around the stories of people. So everybody on the cover would be people on the cover rather than big ideas, which was what I had been doing. It would tell the stories of the people making technology and what their dreams were. It would talk about who we would make stars out of the nerds. We wanted to make nerds famous celebrities. And most importantly, Lewis wanted to make a magazine that was designed as if it had been mailed back from the future. And when he said that, okay, I'm the editor of another magazine. I'm on sabbatical writing a book, but I will help you launch the first 2 issues because I think this is going to work. I don't think a new magazine is going to survive, but I think the idea is going to work, and I'll help you launch the first 2 issues. Well, it was so much fun that I said, okay, this is going to work.
Okay.
I really thought that this combination was exactly what was going to work. And so, you know, I stuck with it. That was 92, 93. And so that was the moment where we decided we would try to help make technology cool. We would tell the stories of the people and the dreams of those who are making it in Silicon Valley, which nobody we're talking to. And the reason why Wired was successful commercially was because Lewis and Jane were business people, and they said something, they observed something very, very true, which was all the people and all the technology people in Silicon Valley, they're not watching TV. They're not reading, you know, Life magazine, Reader's Digest. They're making a lot of money and they're not being reached. We, with our magazine, will reach them. So, and this was the pitch to the advertisers. If you want to reach people who are making a lot of money that are influential and that nobody else is reaching, advertise in Wired. And so that's what we were doing. We were the first to kind of cater to the tech nerds and the geeks and saying, look, you are important. We're going to talk to you. We're going to talk to your language, and we're going to make us cool. We're going to put, you know, Bill Gates on the cover. That was like a really radical idea at the time because he was a nerd. He was who wants to talk to Bill Gates.
I'm laughing because it's true. I'm old enough to remember all these things that you're saying, and the zeitgeist, the temperature of that time.
Right.
It's true. You kind of got Lucian obviously is a businessman, but he was also smart enough to realize that a guy like you would be able to help him in ways that probably no one else ever could. Which leads me to my next question. To me, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. It might make you uncomfortable, so forgive me. But you know, I'm looking at your books, and you know the blurbs people put on there. Mm-hmm. Testimonials, as it were, right? And the thing that comes up time and time again is the way you think and the clarity of your thought and the clarity or the persuasiveness of your argument in viewing the future. And what do you? That's may make you uncomfortable, but clearly you've struck a chord, and it's not just me who sees it. Many people have seen it. What do you attest that to? Because from my perspective, it seems like you don't allow, I don't know how to put this, but you don't burden yourself with extra bars, you know, like prison bars in your mind, where some people have accepted those prison bars to be in their mind and actually think they're real. That's the best way I can put that.
So I liked having my mind changed.
Aha. Okay.
I liked Timothy Leary's expression, you're only as young as the last time you changed your mind.
I didn't know he said that. Okay.
So the other thing is, I have a faith, a worldview, and I'm very aware of the fact that our assumptions and our worldview can color how we see things. So I really make an effort to try and reposition myself in my worldview, to try to re-inhabit or empathetically inhabit a different worldview to see if I can understand that, because I see myself that I have a worldview that often doesn't coincide with others, and so everybody has a worldview. Let me see if I can change my worldview to
Right on.
so that kind of like worldview hopping is sort of part of what I do. I would
Mhm.
also say that like I began writing as a means of thinking, because I'm not a fast thinker or a fast talker.
Mm.
And I um I don't I found out that when I was writing that I didn't understand what I thought I understood. And
Well said. Well said. That
so writing
definitely is
for me
part of
was
that.
an act of thinking. It was a way to figure out what I was thinking. I didn't even know what I thought
Yeah.
until I started to write it. Okay. And so writing was a way of me kind of talking to myself and figuring out what I thought and what I meant. And I am basically, I think what you hear in it is actually my honesty, in the sense that I don't want to say something that I don't really believe in. Part of what I would write is I would always be asking myself, do I really believe what I just wrote there? Do I
Right
really believe
on.
that? Or am I
Okay.
just repeating what I've heard?
Right.
And
Right.
so I say, I don't think I really, really believe that. I think I'm just parroting that. What do I really think right here?
Mhm.
And that, trying to kind of like know myself or be honest about my beliefs,
Mhm.
would, or I don't really understand that. And so that effort to try and understand something and be honest at it comes off as original writing, but it's really, it's much more like authentic writing than it is original. I don't necessarily
I would
mean others
agree.
not be, I don't think they're more creative than others. It's just that I am trying to be as honest in reporting them
Mhm.
as I can be.
Mhm. Mhm. I would agree. Having read a lot of the stuff that you've written, not all of it, but a lot
Mhm.
of it, that there is, you said it, it was amazing. It's a part of your personality, and it's a part of your belief system and your value system. And I always try to ask these questions of whomever I'm talking to, whether I'm doing an interview with a podcast or I'm just talking to friends and family. That's the way I'm hardwired. So I guess it's kind of parallel or similar to your worldview. I'm very aware, I always have been, that my world is not the only world.
Right.
And there's a battle cry, even with my wife, likes to say, "That's not the way I was raised." To which I reply, "No one cares how you were raised, right? Nobody cares. We all are beating our own little drums." And I was always aware of that. So you have that, and it comes through in your writing, like you
Mhm.
just said, an empathetic viewpoint. You literally do put yourself in the other person's shoes and take yourself for a good long walk in it to see what's going on. And then the key element, if you ask me, what you just said, is you have a desire to be authentic and honest
Mhm.
with yourself. And as I've started to write more and more, I can write creatively. I've done that a long time. That kind of comes easier for me. When I started to write about things that mattered to me, or issues or topics that I wanted to share with others, my God, you hit it right on the head. First thing I realized was like, son, your thinking is muddied. Number two, you don't really know what you think. And the writing process really is a
Right.
therapeutic process. And it
Right.
forces a person to clarify their thinking. And I think that's what people are responding to. But to be fair, Kevin, you do have a, this unique amalgam that is you, which sees the world from just a different viewpoint. So,
Right. Right. Yeah. And the other thing is I've been very lucky. I think luck is unfairly distributed around the world. This is very, very obvious.
Truly.
I think you can increase the surface area of your luck so that it can intersect, be prepared for luck when it comes. But there's no question I've been very, very lucky in what I can do. But one of the reasons why I was lucky is that I have had some success enough to be able to kind of graduate to another level, so that I can become more me. And that level that I wish that I had aimed for earlier, which someone had told me about it, was there is a natural progression of maturing in career, where in the very, very beginning, like most young people, I am just concerned about doing the job well, whatever the job is,
Okay.
whether it's when I was working, operating this big camera, it's like, I just don't mess up. I want to do it well. I want to do it as well as I possibly can. And that's a really good thing. And then the second step you get is, well, I'm doing really, really well, and I wanted to work doing something that I really enjoy doing, right? Not just, rake the leaves or dig the ditch well, but I wanted to be doing well something that I like to do. So if you can get to that kind of job, oh, wow, that's really, really great. And then if the third level is kind of, well, I'm doing really well, I'm doing it well, and I love to do this. And by the way, it's very valuable. They're going to pay me a lot for it, whatever that profession might be. If you can kind of then get to that third step where I am doing it well, I love to do it, and I'm getting paid a lot because it's valuable, you think, okay, that's the pinnacle, but it's not. The pinnacle is, what I understood is, once you get to that level, you suddenly, success has its own dynamic, and suddenly you have more offers, more chances than before. There's tons and tons of things that I would be really good at, that I would really enjoy, and that would pay a lot. How do I decide? Well, there's a whole bunch of things that I just mentioned that other people could do other than myself.
Okay.
And I know that because my job at Wired in Whole Earth as an editor was try to give away really great ideas, to take really good things that I could have done.
Oh, and then pass it off to someone to do stories
someone
on.
else. I would say,
Gotcha.
here's
Okay.
a really great idea. It would be really fun. I could write this. It would be really fun. But I want you to do, because I have more than I can do. And I would try to sell these ideas over and over again, and nobody would take them. And then after years of trying to give away an idea that was really fantastic, it kept coming back. I couldn't kill it. I realized, oh, nobody can do this. I'm the only one that can do this. And then I would do it, and it would be my best thing.
Amazing. Wow.
Because no one else could do it. And when you're in that position of doing something that you love to do, you can do well, you're paid well to do it, but nobody else can do it or wants to do it, you have no competition. Take your time. Take 40 years to make a book. I can go because nobody else is ever going to make this book. No one else thinks it's a good idea. No one else likes it. There's no name for this. So it's easy at that point, because you're going at your own rate. You don't have to worry about someone else coming along. If someone came along, I would say, fine, good, I'll give it to you.
Right.
And now I don't have to do that. I can turn my attention to something else. So I am in the business of trying to give away my ideas all the time in the hopes that someone else will take it, because that means that was one I didn't have to do because someone else could do it. I only want to do the things that I can't give away, that nobody will steal from me, that I can't even pay people to do.
Right.
That's the ones I want to do. And that's
so refreshing. Yes.
Is a book that only I could do. So it has me in it.
Right.
Because believe me, I've tried to give it away.
And people looked at you like you had three heads.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So that is where you want to get to, young person. It'll take you all your life to get there, because it requires you to kind of be very aware of what it is that you do and better than others, that self-knowledge. So all of the other jobs are kind of in preparation for you to understand what it is that you can do. But a really good way to get there is to try and give away your best ideas.
Wow. Kevin, that's amazing. You just blown my mind. I live in Hollywood. Hollywood, of course, is a state of mind, because if you actually go to literal Hollywood, people always get there and they go, "What is this?" But
It's like
I work
Silicon
in
Valley.
Hollywood.
Silicon Valley is a state of mind. There's no center.
There is no center, right? Exactly. I spent many years growing up in Santa Cruz and around Los Gatos and Mountain View and stuff. I didn't realize that's Silicon. Oh, okay. Anyway, on that note, in this town, and it happens in all industries, not just in Hollywood or Silicon Valley or wherever one happens to be, but people are afraid they're going to steal my idea. I'm going to steal my idea. And my response to that is a little different than yours. It's like, listen, ideas are a dime a dozen. The implementation of your idea, that's king and queen.
Right.
That's the ruler. That's the thing supreme.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to hear you say, I'm giving them away. I'm giving them away, giving them away.
Giving them away in order to arrive at something that you can't give away, because that is what you need to do.
Jesus, that's beautiful. I don't even know if you realize how beautiful that is. I think you do. I would guess that really is beautiful. In giving away, one receives far more than they would ever have gotten if they had hoarded and protected that thing. Don't want to get spiritual or esoteric or ooga booga, but that's quite beautiful. Thank you, sir.
It is. It's part of, it's one of the golden rules that, the more you give away, the more you get. That's the beginning of wisdom. Right. It's in the Bible, etc. So it is a good way to live. I need to kind of run to the next thing.
I was just going to say it's time to wrap up. I could talk to you for another hour easily, and I would love to come back and visit this again. The book I'm going to get. All I know is I can go to Kickstarter right now. Correct?
Right. So Kickstarter is a place where you can get this 3-volume set, 1,000 pages. 9,000 images, 9,000 captions. It weighs 27 pounds. It is unlike any other book in the world. And I have the library of all the photo books in the world. And I can say without any qualms that it's unlike anything that you've ever seen. You will really enjoy the trip. It will take 3 hours just to turn all the pages and look at them, not reading anything. So it's a real trip. You won't be disappointed, and they're on a discount right now from the retail price on Kickstarter. So head there.
Exactly, right on. Kevin, I thank you so much for this. It's been a real treat. Went even better than I had imagined. You're a guy of multiple talents and a lot of wisdom and a hell of a lot of heart. And
thank you for having me. I enjoyed the conversation. And I wish you the best as well. And
thanks.
I'm sure when you give away the thing that will be left, it'll be the most you of all the things you've ever done.
I love it. Thank you, Kevin. Have a great day. Bye-bye.